So thank you to everyone who registered in the webinar in this series. We're going to discuss today about the Greek and the Irish market, the developments, the latest developments, the risk and the opportunities. My name is Ypatios Moysiadis. I'm the Business Development Director and UK Country Manager for Greensolver. And I have the pleasure with me to have today my colleagues, which I haven't seen for a long time in face-to-face. We have Katarzyna Siadak, who is the UK Head of Commercials, and of course our CEO, Auger. Thank you very much both for your time this morning and for the effort we've put to deliver this webinar. Without any further delays, I will share my screen. I will be managing the presentation slides, so please let me know when the slides will change, and I will give the floor to Guy to start with us.
Well, yeah, welcome everyone. Happy to have you with us this morning. So yeah, so as Ypatios said, we'll talk a bit of two very exciting markets for investors, which are Ireland and Greece. If you want to skip to the next slide, I'll just give you a very brief introduction of Greensolver. As you know now, the big topic is the raison d'être, the why we exist, and I think Greensolver, our own reason is really about creating value, environmental and financial, and our customers being the whole value chain of renewables, from finishing, but starting for us with investors, but through development, even the municipalities. It's something we really strive to do. If you go to the next slide, I'll just go very quickly to explain who we are. But today, so we are present in 10 countries. We're European. We do operations, so managing more than 1.3 gigawatts of assets across Europe, wind and solar. We've been building a lot of mostly wind, but now also more solar asset in terms of construction management, and then advisory and consulting. That is moving very quickly now. We're almost at 18 gigawatts. Obviously, one of our, as creating value, one of the key points beyond having multitude of people is the ISO processes, including, of course, 9001, but also the 55001, which is the asset management one. References, you can see, we have worked worldwide. Again, the bulk, all our offices are in Europe right now. Obviously, we are looking now at doing probably outside of Europe expansion. So more on that to come at a later point. But in terms of advisory, we've been also very active elsewhere. So as we said, so we'll cover Irish and Greece. If you very quickly, my 2 cents on these topics. If you want to keep clicking, Ypatios. In Greece, we said, Greece is about to take off. If you look at the history and and where we are now, obviously there was 2012 a kind of a first acceleration with solar picking up, but at a let's say decent pace. Now we're sitting in 2020. You can see the curve is where that's what going through the expectation of what Greece wants to achieve and what matches the actual targets. If you go to the next slide, the issue of Greece is that Greece remains a tricky country to some extent. So it's not a walk in the park. I actually put the slide from our friends at EY on their attractiveness index, and you can see, actually Greece is actually quite low down the path, where our view at Greensolver is that we think that's probably underestimating the country, because even though the actual potential in gigawatts is maybe modest compared to China or the US, but actually we think there's a lot to be done, and that's what we'll present to you a bit later. In Ireland, the picture from EY is different. Obviously, much more bullish on Ireland and climbing. A lot of that. Ireland is obviously an easier country to do business in. It's a country with the best wind resource in Europe, and now even some a decent solar ambition. So clearly a country to watch for. I mean, obviously investors like it. It's very much open for and easy to invest in. Hence, a darling of the EY rankings. And if you look at the actual potential, we actually put a very just on the next slide, Ypatios, the view is obviously today. You can see renewables already represents about a third of the fuel mix in Ireland. The target is actually to double that, so to be well over the 50% and more than the 70% by 2030. And that is again why we think it's definitely a country that's worth looking at. So that's that. I mean, without further ado, I guess I'll leave the content to the experts. So Kat will present the Irish market, and then Ypatios will do the same on the Greece opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. Kat, can I kindly ask you to speak a bit loudly so we can have a better audio, because we had a couple of notifications that the audio might be a bit poor. So please speak up a bit loudly on your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try. Is that okay?
A bit more.
Can you hear me well? Well, good morning, everyone. So yes, as Guy has mentioned, the renewables penetration in the fuel mix in Ireland is already sizable, and we've seen a steady growth over the last decade from 1.6 gigawatt peak to 4.5 gigawatt peak last year. As we can see from the graph as well, that the majority of that, basically all of it really, is onshore wind, and that the growth has been really steady. And the reason for this is mainly the two previous governmental support mechanisms. So that was alternative energy requirement auctions that happened in the 90s, which was not that successful, but the feed-in tariff program introduced in 2006 and closed in 2015, that was relatively successful. And that's why we can see 4.1 gigawatt of wind capacity in Ireland right now. Irish government has a very ambitious target at this point. In last year, they announced climate action plan, and they want 70% of electricity to be generated from renewables. So basically, they want to double what they have, and in order to achieve this, up to 30 terawatt hours, as we said, of renewable generation will need to be required by the end of the decade. The climate action plan pointed out that they're hoping that auctions could deliver up to 8.2 gigawatt of onshore wind, 3.5 of offshore wind, and 1.5 of solar. So the way in which our government wants to achieve its ambitious target is through competitive auctions. The first auction the process has already started. There will be at least 3 more by 2027, and depending on the outcome, potential 5th one by the end of the decade. As we can see, the capacity that they want to procure in the current auction is the smallest. There will be quite sizable increase in RES 2 and RES 3. So the only details that we have at this stage are about the first, the RES 1. In terms of single technology cap, there won't be one in this round. There will be one in the next one, but details of the following 2 rounds are at this stage unknown. The auctions are designed to meet both the climate action plan and the European union's policies and requirements. And moving to the next slide. So just to give you a background, because of the COVID-19, the RES 1 timetable was amended on the 30th of April. Originally, the qualification process started on in the beginning of March. It was supposed to be completed by 2nd of April, but because of the COVID, the deadline was extended. But because of that, the whole timeline shifted. So now the auction will take place in July, and the qualifying period was already closed. So basically, we're just now waiting to hear which projects were successful in the qualification stage. And next slide. So to give you more details about the auctions, the auction itself. In this auction, projects will compete in 3 categories. The first one is community projects. Then we have solar category and all category. In all eligible technologies is onshore, offshore wind, solar, hydro, waste to energy, biomass, and biogas. The smallest project that you can introduce in this round of auctions is a 0.5 megawatt project. And then depending for which category you'll be competing, there is a maximum capacity that you can submit. So for community projects, the projects have to be between 0.5 megawatt and 5 megawatts. Solar projects have to be only up to 125 megawatts. And for all categories, it will have to be equivalent of 600 gigawatt hours per year. In terms of how long the subsidy would last, it will be between 16.5 and 14 years. Projects will start receiving support from either commercial operations date or July 2021, whichever is later. That means that if a project can be operational in July 2021, they can earn additional 1.5 years of support versus projects connected in December 2022, not to mention the ones connected in 23. This may obviously impact bidding strategies, so those projects those who are able to connect their projects earlier may bid lower prices. And obviously then altogether the support will end on the 31st of December 2037. With the next slide, we have a few more details that are quite significant. If you look at the financial details details that will affect the finances of the projects that you can potentially look at. In terms of eligibility rules, projects had to have a grid offer, full planning application, secured land. What is important is they had to also submit bid bonds in the amount of 2,000 euros per megawatt. And they already had to be posted at the end of April with the deadline for the qualifying projects applications. All projects will have to set and meet project milestones. And if those milestones are not met, TSO can draw on the bid bond. So throughout the auction process, all of the terms and conditions of the auction have to be met, along with all of the project milestones set by participants, or else TSO can draw on a bid bond. In terms of financial structure, it's a two-way contract for differences. It will be funded from the Public Service Obligation Levy. It's a two-way floating bid-in premium, where projects will receive support payment and pay the difference payment. So always be a difference between a strike price and market price. There is a maximum set for price offer, and in this round it's 120 euros per megawatt, and RES 1 support is a pay as bid. Another important consideration is that projects that are successful in auctions throughout the process will have to submit a performance bond that will be in the amount of 25,000 euros per megawatt of offered quality. And once TSO can draw on in case of along the way any of the terms and conditions or project milestones are not met. Last but not least, something that's affecting the financing of the project is the fact that successful projects, once operational, will have to contribute to a community bond, and that will be €2 per megawatt hour. There's also a little table at the bottom, which can just represent maximum and minimum quantities that the government is expecting to contract in this auction. So obviously, it's worth saying a few words about the grid when talking about connecting renewables. Earlier in the decade, it was the system non-synchronous penetration limit was 50. The government introduced the DS3 program, which basically aims to affect the factors that influence the limit, and managed to increase it to 65% by Q1 2018, and furthermore, its goal is to increase it to 75%. Government's limit, and the one announced in the Climate Action Plan, they want to facilitate higher penetration and increase it to even up to 90%. And they plan to achieve it through system services, but that's something that mostly DS3 program is involved in, but also market arrangements and general increasing flexibility, as well as grid enforcement works. If we can move on to the next slide, the DS3 program that I've just mentioned is what DSE, I should mention, stands for Delivering a Sustainable Electricity System. And that program was established is the driver behind the high interest in battery storage in Ireland. Right now we have 2.1 gigawatt pipeline with diversity of projects, including co-location, standalone batteries, and behind the meter. These three program as such allows operators to procure ancillary services. So that would be frequency response or reserve services. And because of subsequent response that batteries can provide, they are ideal candidate for this program. Within the program carried out auction last year that ended in September 2019, and in the table we can see the type of services that were procured and the final price that was achieved. Statkraft and Gore Street were among companies that secured contract in that round. A few words also about the grid connections themselves. So if a project, who you're applying for a connection to will depend on the size of the project. So distribution system operator, you'll be applying to distribution system operator if a project is below 40 megawatts, and those above 40 megawatts are connected to a TSO, and that's where you're applying for the grid. In short, the connection process requires ordnance survey map and site map. Then you have to complete and submit an application and make a payment of €7,000. In 2018, in March 2018, a new process for grid connection was announced. It's enduring connection policy, stage 1. Stage 1 has already ended. It's now closed for projects that are above half a megawatt. So these projects will not be accepted until the next round, ECP2. And that is supposed to open at the end of 2020. So basically right now, applications for grid for projects above half a megawatts are not open. For those interested, there's also a table that gives you a view of how much you can expect to pay for a grid connection. And obviously it depends largely on the size of the project and the projects are required. Next slide. As I said, so the ECP stage 1 is already closed, and this slide is giving us an overview of the types of application, of the types and the number of applications that were submitted in that round. We can see that there were 15 applicants for battery storage, trying to take advantage of the DS3 program. And in total, for new applicants, we had 902 megawatt peak. In general, looking at the Irish market, it seems like the most the safest approach would be to look at the projects that have qualified for the auctions. Obviously, this is not the information that we have right now, but in the next few months it will be announced, and this will be the safest projects. And the second category would be projects with a secured grid connection, just because we cannot apply for grid at this stage. The rules were changed, and you need the planning permission to apply for the grid. So then it's also a consideration of making sure that the planning permission does not expire before you are able to apply for a grid, and then to apply for the next round of auctions. And as a Greensolver, we're actively involved in this market. We have a team on the ground office in Dublin. So if there's any further information or any questions that you have about the topics I raised, please let us know. We'll be happy to help.
Thank you very much, Kat, for the presentation. As Kat mentioned, we're quite actively working in the Irish market, both in the Republic as well as in Northern Ireland, which it's obviously part of the UK. But we have teams there, and we can approach any sort of issues or needs on due diligence, on asset management or construction management services that someone might need within the Irish market. And we can do any sort of initial feasibility studies on projects or portfolios, taking from an end-to-end sort of services, starting at the initial green site development all the way to acting as lenders advisors or buyers advisors or sellers advisors on operating assets. So I will continue ahead with the Greek market outlook. Obviously, being Greek, this whole thing came on my shoulders, and I was quite happy to be able to start getting involved in the Greek market after a few years. So I will start by giving you a very similar graph to what Guy presented at the beginning, the opening of this presentation. So this is the national energy and climate plan that Greece has put in place. You can see that the inspiration is to be able to reach just short of 16 gigawatts of installed power by 2030, and the mix at that point will be pretty much, the same between the two main technologies, which is solar and wind, and you can see that progressing throughout the years. Even starting at 2020, it's very similar, the installed capacity, going all the way to 2030. In Greece, we had 6 auctions up until this point. The first auction started on July 2018. The latest auction was realized just last month, April. And I think the most interesting price, the most interesting graph is actually the next one, which you can see the lowest, the highest price, and the weighted average of the auctions. So on the first auction, we started with a weighted average at 63.81 on anything between 1 to 20 megawatts of solar, 69.53 on wind, and anything below 1 megawatt at 78.42. And moving down, and this is a trend we see across the different markets. If you look at the recent German auctions, we have very similar prices at the end, the region of 50 euro cents. Right now, we had an average weighted at 51.59, which was the weighted average, and the lowest price at 49.11 was submitted for big projects from the public power company in the region of Western Macedonia and in northwest Greece. So this is a representation of the prices in the auctions. I think even on the next auctions in 2020, we're going to see prices at high 40s, low 50s. I think this is going to be the trend moving forward. And also we expect to see very similar pricing achieved in the Irish auctions. A very interesting also point is the electricity prices. So you can see the weighted yearly average of the electricity market on the interconnected system. You have to be aware that Greece has an interconnected system which includes the mainland and some of the islands. There are further infrastructure projects that are underway at the moment, connecting large islands like Crete and also high demand islands like the Cyclades Islands, where they're very touristy, especially in the summer period. And you could see that the weighted yearly average was pretty much above 68 euros per megawatt hour over the last 2 years, with a peak in 2019. This is the limited data we have for the first 3 months for 2020, but it's something to look at when you're doing your bidding strategy and planning ahead on the prices you're going to submit in the auctions. This is the electricity demand. So you can see the electricity demand in the annual peaks. It's a historic data between 2000 and 2018. This is the total net electricity demand in terawatt hours. And you can see that pretty much there is a steady demand between 50 to 55 terawatt hours annually. And if you connect that with historic data in the forecast, we see today at 2020 that the net demand is going to be increased, hopefully. You can see from 2008 till 2014 a dip in demand. This was due to the slowdown of the crisis, of the financial crisis in Greece, and then it started, being in a steady state. And now the forecast, which you have two different situations here. You have the national projections on the green squares, and then the increased demand scenario, which is on the red triangles. So there is an upward trend on the demand, and also we will see it in the later slides. There is a higher penetration of renewable energy due to the national plan to shut down the coal-fired factories, electricity factories, which they started actually closing down some of these units even this year, or reducing the hours that they operate. They have there is a national plan in place to stop coal production being part of the electricity mix by 2023, which is a very ambitious plan. Now, a very critical, if you would like, point on the Greek market is the grid capacity. This is a snapshot from October 2019 of all the non-binding grid connection offers that were submitted out, the binding grid offers, and the operational capacity. We feel that a lot of the initial non-binding grid connection offers are not going to be realized, especially in solar. But this remains to be seen. We felt that during the last, if you would like, process, especially the way that you could apply for a production license in RAE, there was a lot of speculation, and a lot of developers saw it as an opportunistic way of securing land and you had a lot of applications to acquire a production license, which had not secured the leases. And obviously, if you don't secure the lease, then you cannot continue on the development of the project. So after they were securing the production license, then they were trying to secure the leases in the given area, which is also a point that you need to be extremely aware when you're looking to acquire portfolios from local developers. And I will come to these points later on. This is a couple of the grid maps in Greece. You can see the high voltage lines on the right-hand side, which is controlled by the TCO, by ADMIE, and also a map of the interconnected system margins on the left-hand side, which is the map from the DIE. This gives us a snapshot of availability on the grid. However, you need to be extremely aware that right now the time of processing grid application is extended. The VA on the local level up to 8 megawatts of connections is struggling with the applications, and also we see as a trend that everything which is the MV network is pretty much constrained, so there is no more capacity if all the applications that went through will come to realization. So there are a lot of different schemes at the moment of project clustering or larger projects that they wish to apply to connect to the HV lines, and they apply directly to ADMIE. As a good indication, I think you can see here, this is from the Hellenic Wind Energy Association. You can see the penetration of wind energy in Greece, and you can see that by region. So you can see that in Peloponnese, which is the southern part with the 3 legs, and also in central Greece, just above Athens, you have a very big penetration of wind projects. And hence, right now, everything, all the projects that they are realized within the Peloponnese region are constrained. They cannot be connected. There are some upgrades and line reinforcements that are happening at the moment, but there is a long list of people that they are wishing to connect there. So there is a priority list for projects to be connected in Peloponnese. And we would advise, if you're looking to develop projects in Greece, to look away from these areas that most likely are constrained. This is a different view of pretty much the same thing, but here you can have also you can see the penetration of solar. So in solar, you have larger penetration in Central Macedonia, which is north central Greece, in Western Greece, and also there is a good mix of solar installations around the rest of Greece. Looking at the Greek market, we have 3 different options of participating. The one is to participate through the renewable energy system auctions. These auctions are also technology specific or can be neutral. And then you have the second stage where you have the mega projects, the 250 plus megawatt projects. That these are going through a different process. It's a minister decision, and it's a so-called fast track project development. And then starting from July, if there is no further delays due to COVID, we expect that the merchant market will open. So the day-ahead market, which you can work through aggregators and energy wholesalers, and you can go 100% merchant on your projects. Some latest key legislative changes. We had some changes in the modernization, if you would like, of the environmental legislation. This aims to reduce the time that the renewable energy projects require for licensing. They introduced a statutory time for response to the administration level. and also they have created an electronic register of the applicants. So there will be a better control and clarity on the queue, if you would like, of the licenses. Due to COVID-19, we had some extensions, and I see all your questions, and we will do the Q&A when I just finish the presentation. I'm happy to answer all your questions, so please bear with us. Due to COVID-19, we had three extensions given. So to all the projects that they were supposed to be connected by June the 30th, 2020, it was given an extension of 6 months. An extension of 4 months were given to projects that were supposed to be connected between July the 1st and December 31st, 2020. And an extension of 2 months was given for the acceptance of the final offer for the renewable energy project. Also, something that we feel that is a move towards the right direction is the introduction of gate fees. Introduction of gate fees upon application for a production license means that a lot of the speculators will be stopped of applying. So there is a waterfall effect depending on how many megawatts your project is, that you need to pay as a gate fee. There is a 50% down payment upon application and 50% down payment. The 50% remaining amount is paid a year after the initial application. Obviously, there are 3 different regulations in place. You have net metering, which is mostly for residential and CNI projects. You have the virtual PPA and that you have on utility scale, and also there are the so-called energy communities, which are for communities of projects or multiple owners that they have, up to 1 megawatt of projects each, so they can come together and they create this sort of energy communities. Changes in the wind sector, we have the duration of the environmental license increased from 10 to 15 years. They introduced shorter deadlines. It remains to be seen on some of the procedures. The production license in RES on the wind sector is substitute from a certification of renewable energy system producer. You have 2 different project categories. One is for projects above 150 megawatts, and the other one is for projects below 150 megawatts. The first special project goes under evaluation procedure, which is very similar to the existing one, so there had no changes there. But for the non-special projects, they've introduced a very similar gate fee for the applicant to pay, as mentioned above, on solar. And also, applications for new certifications may be submitted in the first days of each month, so February, June, and October, starting on October 2020. We have a new legislation that introduces energy storage and the energy storage framework, which is under development. There was a very recent study that was released, and also a very successful webinar that the regulatory authority put in place. We expect to see the details and the actual actionable and applicable framework of how someone can invest in storage. But in order to see this participation of 60% of RES in the renewable energy mix by 2030, the government believes, and I think it's also the same opinion, that you cannot achieve that without storage, which will act as someone that can shift, that can do power shifting, and also grid support, offer grid support services. This can be also, it's going to be a combination. Obviously, there is no single technology solution. So the government is looking to put in place a combination of pumping and battery storage projects. Some key deadlines that were announced. We have a competitive bidding process announced for for July, and the deadline for electronic submissions are by June the 29th. So this is for solar projects below 20 megawatts and wind projects with proposed installed capacity of less than 50 megawatts. I will just spend a couple of minutes here. This is an indicative development cost per megawatt of solar PV in Greece. In this big pie chart, we've also included our conservative estimations on connection bonds, which is between 20 to 30,000 per megawatt, the bid bond and the performance bond that someone needs to pay. But if you look at the pure development cost, our expectation is that pure development cost starting from pre-development, so all the checks you need to do on land, the checks on the land registry, or ownership checks, checks on the grid, initial checks with archaeology and forestry departments and the local level, and so on and so forth. And then moving to lease. And then on the development phase, moving to all the necessary reports, the environmental application, the grid connection, and all the necessary other costs, which is salaries, traveling, and anything that is accompanying the development process. We feel that a cost between 15 to 25,000 euros per megawatt is an indicative development, a safe indicative development cost per megawatt. To conclude, I would like to leave you with 5 key takeaways. When you're doing projects in Greece, land is of the utmost importance. So checks on land, especially if there are no records in the land registry. There are many hereditary issues with the land, and also the land is extremely fragmented. So it will be very difficult to put together individual land plots, or it will be time consuming to put together individual land plots to make big projects. And also the municipal or public land, it's there, it's in most cases larger, but it's also harder to secure because you will need to go through a bidding process when the land becomes available. And there are a plot of lands in the public land that that the renewable energy projects are excluded, and they are specifically for farming purposes. So you need to have a very good local consultant or a local development partner that can guide you there. The grid availability also is, as I said previously, is key. So we have all the pretty much the MV lines or the connection points taken. So what we see at the moment is a lot of clustering. We are working on 3 different projects right now in Greece, where we have clusters of projects starting at 50 megawatts, going all the way to 100 megawatts, that they are looking to connect with the HV network. So we are in discussions with ADMIE, and we are leading and managing these discussions on the best point of connection, specifications of the substations, and all the related issues that comes with that. Debt finance, the good, if you would like, news is that through our interaction with the Greek banks, we see that the so-called systemic banks, which are the 4 banks in Greece following the restructure of the banking sector from the financial crisis, they are willing to back bricks and mortars or infrastructure level assets. So renewables fall within that category. So it will be much easier to engage even local debt finance on your projects. On the grid, there are major interconnection projects going on. There are 2 new projects that they are in planning to connect grid with the current infrastructure and with interconnected network. And also there are plans that hopefully will be realized in the future for further connections with Italy and Cyprus. What I would say is that there are project opportunities right now for acquisition and development. You have legacy projects from the 2012, 2011, 2013 era, where right now are on sale, and these are operational projects. We feel that the prices that that asset owners are asking for, also the size of the projects are a bit high. So we feel that a fair price would be between a multiple of 4 to 5. We're asking prices at multiples of 6 and 7. So we need to be a bit careful there, and also you need to be extremely aware that you need a very good due diligence if you're planning to buy operational assets. But there is still a window for greenfield project development. We are looking to see when the extension on the auction system will be finalized. Up until now, the auction system will run until the end of 2020, but all the information from the government and from the responsible organizations within the energy sector are talking about a pretty much secured extension, at least up to 2022, maybe even 2023. Any sort of changes that the new extension will bring, we don't know if they're going to continue in the same sort of strategy of technology specific and technology agnostic auctions, or they will just go into a technology neutral system. This remains to be seen. But we feel still that the biggest opportunity in Greece is to partner with a reliable local developer that can build up bankable projects and develop portfolios or invest in multi-technology platforms. So not just perhaps in solar or wind, but a combination of both. We haven't touched any other technologies like the AD biogas. We've concentrated this specific presentation on solar and wind because we feel that these are the most imminent and the mainstream technologies, the opportunities that you can very quickly capitalize on. But there are also specific opportunities in the AD biogas sector, which is a bit more difficult because obviously there you need to have a secure feedstock agreement. This is much more difficult to structure. So with this, I will just leave you with our team experience. We've recently opened our offices in Athens. We are investing in Greece. We are already working there. We've been pretty much there, and the team has experience since 2006. Both Guy and I were very active in the Greek market. I was developing at the time and selling and operating assets, and Guy was part of the IOFI team and up until 2014 in Greece. So with a bit of a gap between 2014 and 2019, we've re-entered the market with a localized team, localized expertise both in solar and wind, and we are already working on specific projects, mostly on technical due diligence, design optimization. We do a lot of procurement and tender management. We're looking at relicensing and also any sort of technical reporting that needs to be done. Thank you very much for that. We will now take your questions, and let's just open 13 questions.
Yes, I think that there are a few. While I was talking, few people submitted some questions. So if I can address the first few ones really quick. Gigawatt hours. It's a basically measure of energy. So it's a power use over time, as it's built towards end users, so basically clients. And I hope Lauren, it helps. Ruben asked, why would a solar PV developer apply in the all projects category? I think number one is because the delivery timeline for solar PV is so much shorter than for wind, you take advantage of a longer time of support. So I guess the business model is slightly different there. Like you get more support basically over time. And also, if your project is, I mean, there's some limitations on how big the project can be under each category. And for solar, that would be 125 megawatts. Alexis asked about the form of a subsidy. So as I mentioned, it's a two-way floating feed-in tariff. So you're going to get a strike price. So your offer price will become your strike price, and then there will be a market price. And so it will be a floating feed-in tariff between those two. So if the strike price exceeds the market price, you will get a support payment. And if it's the other way around, you will have to pay. You'll have to pay the difference. So you have to put a difference payment.
Okay, and I can ask the next question on from an anonymous attendee, whether we act as consultants to connect project sellers and interesting parties. Yes, we are in a way, but we are not project brokers. Greensolver is not brokering projects. So naturally, we work both with investors and developers, and our interest is to help our clients move forward their projects. So we have a very good visibility in the market about projects that they are on sale, or portfolios or platforms that they are on sale. And what we do is on the other hand, we're establishing even more good relationship with investment companies that are investing in specific markets. So we do the matchmaking, and the interest of Greensolver, of course, is to look at the construction and the realization of the projects, and help with our services and with our teams or towards that goal. What are the green hydrogen opportunities in both countries? Guy, do you want to comment on that, perhaps?
Difficult for me, we're very much involved in green hydrogen in countries which are very active, which are France, Netherlands, and then the UK. Ireland and Greece, we haven't been involved in any green hydrogen project, but it doesn't say that there's none, but it's not, it's not on our radar.
I don't think that we are, I mean, there are hydrogen discussions. If you look at the discussions that are happening right now, especially on the decarbonization and moving away from burning fossil fuels for the energy production, there is a specific, let's say, movement, especially in the region of Western Macedonia, where all the big coal plants are, to substitute the coal with hydrogen. But obviously hydrogen has its own difficulties as fuel. Also on the generation, how are you going to generate hydrogen? What kind of energy are you going to use, and where are you going to find the energy to do the hydrolysis? So there are specific challenges that needs to be addressed. I don't think that the discussion of hydrogen in Ireland or in Greece are at a mature point at this stage. There are always projects on research level, or demonstration projects that will happen. But I think the hydrogen discussion, especially in Greece, it's very premature. I think the next big discussion in Greece is going to be EVs. We recently had an announcement from the Greek government that they're going to have a subsidy of up to 5,000 to 6,000 on private vehicles, and up to 12,000 on corporate vehicles if you go full EV. So we expect a very quick uptake on the EV infrastructure that will happen in Greece. Next questions. Kat, you would like to comment something? Sorry.
That's right. I think in Ireland they're looking mostly at hydrogen when modeling 100% penetration of renewables in the fuel mix. And right now, you really focus on reaching that 70%. So that has not been a priority, definitely.
Then Kim is asking about how the COVID-19 will affect the demand curves. I think that Greece will not be a surprise. We've seen throughout Europe the reduction on demand. So this is exactly what we're going to see, I think, in Greece. at least for 2020. If you're looking at the weighted average over the year, I think we're going to see a reduction in demand. You have to imagine that the electricity demand in Greece, it's not from big industrial and heavy industrial usage, but you have peaks, especially in the summertime, due to tourism. And if you think that the country is about 10-11 million, and in the summer we have about 30 odd million tourists coming in within 3 to 4 months, you can see where the demand comes from. Some of that demand also, it's not going to be all renewables. We said that the government is planning up to 60%. The remaining will be a combination of natural gas plants and other technologies. But I think this is what the government is betting to create a base load moving forward. Do you have an overview of total development pipeline in Greece and split between the Greek and international developers? There are international developments that they have partnered with Greek developers already. We see a lot of movement. We have a lot of interest ourselves on that front. An international developer that will start doing development from scratch, I find this I find this very unlikely. But given the fact that we're going to have a lot of financial pressure at the moment and cash flow pressure due to COVID in a lot of developers, I think we're going to see more early stage portfolios floating around. But then, as I said in my presentation, the danger there is that you need to make sure that you have a very thorough and detailed due diligence, and also that to make sure that the projects are developed to international standards, if you would like, and be bankable. Because what I'm saying, since the beginning, pretty much, is that is a different thing to develop a project, and it's a different thing to develop a bankable project. And that's a critical, if you would like, thing on your strategy. We will keep the questions and try to send them some answers and share some answers with you on the follow-up emails. Very conscious that it's already 11. So thank you very much all for participating. If you have any further questions, if you have any further inquiries regarding Ireland and Greece, we would be extremely happy to hear you, and please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.